All right, folks. Hello, and welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to be working on OTN 4, which is going to introduce the second major phase of Marlow's journey in the rising action as he moves from the outer station to the central station. And very similar to the Pilgrim's journey in the Inferno, each phase of the journey helps unfold a deeper layer of Marlow's own heart and of the world that Marlow inhabits and the work that he is engaged in, along with the Belgian Congo Company. Okay, so we'll get into that today. We're going to be working on our SQ3R for that. It won't take very long. And then tomorrow in class and the next day we'll be finishing up our analysis of these three analytical points. Okay, so today should be a relatively brief class, relatively simple class, as we just simply run through and recite what happened in these key pieces of text. Before we do that, let's go ahead and run through our top of the week announcements, just so we can keep a clear understanding of what we need to do in mind. All right, so obviously you need to remember your discussion grade, all right, procedure that has changed. You can leave a question, a summary, or a reflection on what was discussed. Okay, one of those three options. It should take you no longer than 2-3 minutes to spit those things out. But I just want to make sure that you are engaging with the content on a daily basis authentically, and that's how I'm going to offer you your discussion grade. Okay. Aside from that, you need to make sure that you are working through your reading for Part 2 of Heart of Darkness. Obviously, you should have last week read through Part 1 and the beginning of Part 2. I should have gotten your reading check yesterday for that. If you haven't sent that to me, then it is late. Okay, and will be graded as such. Throughout the course of this week, you just need to make sure that you are finishing Part 2. Okay. Aside from that, make sure that you are working on your OTNs. We completed OTN 3 last class period, so you also should have completed OTN 3 at the end of the day yesterday. And now we are going to begin OTN 4. Right? So you just want to keep up with your work on a daily basis. Make sure you're not getting behind on those. Contextualizing all this is your work on the Quarter 4 essay. All right. So we're going to talk more intently about the Quarter 4 essay in the future. Right now, we're focused pretty intensely on finishing up Heart of Darkness in preparation for the Unit 6 test, which is going to be your last test of the year. But when we're done with that, right, we're going to turn our attention sort of solely to finishing up this Quarter 4 essay, which will be your last major task of the quarter. All right. So let's go ahead and get into our work on OTN 4, okay, which is an analysis of the rising action of Marlow's journey in the end of Part 1, pages 68 through 83. Okay, if you have the Barnes & Noble 2003 edition that looks like this. All right. So go ahead and find your way to page 68 of this piece of text, all right, which we're going to be analyzing over the next couple days. And let's simply lay out an SQ3R for this piece of the novel. All right, so who is our speaker? Well, it continues to be Marlow in this section of the narrative, as he is offering a kind of first-hand account of his experiences in the Congo. All right, and Marlow, significantly, who's in control of the narrative, right? He could have just sat down and said, hey, this one time I went to the Congo, it was pretty crazy. But I made it back home. Here I am. Cool. All right. Obviously, Marlow doesn't do that. Obviously, this journey meant more to Marlow than a simple literal movement from point A to point B. You know, like when I go to racetrack to get gas, it's not a pilgrimage, right? That's not a changing my worldview. I'm just getting some gas, moving from point A to point B, right? Marlow obviously describes his journey to the Congo as something with more than just simple literal meaning. It is symbolic. It altered his worldview. It exposed him to a kind of spiritual and moral or philosophical or idealistic truth that he is sharing with the crew members on board the Nelly as the sun goes down all around them on the River Thames. Okay, so he describes this kind of experience that he had going to the Congo, as I've already established, as a journey to the center of the earth. Okay, once again, to review, he's searching for a moral justification, an ideal at the back of his work, at the back of his society, at the back of his world. Okay, something to live for. a kind of transcendent truth, more than just a sentimental pretense that would collapse under the weight of relativism. Okay, I feel like this is a good thing to do because it makes me feel good. Well, obviously, that is not something that is ideal or transcendent. That is dependent purely on the individual's feelings. He doesn't want a sentimental pretense. All right, that's the language that he uses back in the introductory scene. He wants an idea, okay, that redeems the work, that redeems his existence, that redeems his society, that redeems ultimately the world, okay, which on the surface can seem so chaotic, so deadly, so calloused, so absurd, so incomprehensible. What Marlow is looking for is very similar to what the pilgrim is looking for in the opening scenes of the Inferno. He's looking for what all human beings on a certain, to a certain extent, long for. He's looking for the blessed life. He's looking for happiness. He's looking for an existence that is morally coherent, in which he knows what is right and does what is right, okay, and knows what is wrong and doesn't do what is wrong. He is looking simply for the blessed life. All right, now, why does he go to the Congo? Well, because, again, that's where the light should shine the brightest, okay? It's the dark continent. It is the place where members of Marlow's civilization are supposed to be spreading this sacred fire, spreading these moral ideals, and therefore, all right, it would follow that they would be easy to discern there through the contrast, through the comparison. Right? But, right, very troublingly to Marlow, his first exposure to the work of the Belgian Congo Company in the outer station, as discussed in our lecture yesterday, is very disconnected from any kind of humane or morally coherent endeavor. And it certainly isn't undertaken by altruistic, which is to say selfless or helpful individuals. Right? The work in the Congo, rather, is reckless. Objectless blasting, creating vast artificial holes in which the machinery is becoming brutalized and laying like dead carcasses in the Congolese environment instead of expanding man's dominion and flourishing over that environment. Okay, it's unjust. It's in fact a mockery of justice. It is morally absurd, which is quite the opposite of justice. Okay, justice is things as they ought to be. What he sees in the environment of the outer station is things exactly as they ought not to be. All right, and the work is being undertaken by who? Well, the primary worker that he focalizes on is the accountant. Okay, who he sort of ironically praises and depicts as this kind of angel of white light who has enough, quote, backbone to stand in the face of such hypocrisy and moral absurdity, right? Here we are, colonist, spreading civilization, okay, which is based on some kind of belief in the inherent dignity of human beings, right? All forms of civil engagement and civilization has to operate from some sort of belief in the dignity of human beings and the value of human life that distinguishes man from beast. Okay, that they who view themselves as the sort of bearers of those kinds of premises are there treating the people that they're supposed to be helping, the beneficiaries of their altruistic endeavors, are being treated like animals. They're dying like dogs in the shade. And there, the accountant has the backbone to stand in the face of this kind of hypocrisy and to keep working, right? To keep making sure his hair looks nice, okay? The genre, the style of the text, it's a journey narrative. It's a symbolic pilgrimage, okay? This is stuff we've already discussed, but I just am reiterating because it is central for our understanding of this piece of text as a whole, okay? So Marlow is continuing to grow closer to the center of the earth, like the Pilgrim and Inferno. Each stage of the journey reveals a deeper level of his heart, and by extension, the hearts of all men and the environment that they inhabit, okay? You can sort of conceive of it like this. Marlow's journey narrative, which is the inner frame of the story, all right, that has happened in the past that Marlow is reflecting on and telling his friends in real time, in the fictional real time on the Thames, begins in Europe. All right, and he moves out of Europe, searching for that sacred fire. He stops first at the outer station, where the sacred fire is certainly not at work. But he certainly can't stop there. He like the Pilgrim in Inferno has to keep going to find out what's true, what's at the heart, what's at the back of all this. And the next phase that we're going to explore is the central station. Okay, so what is the dominant question that's going to be explored in these pieces of text? Well, basically, how does the style of Marlow's narration characterize the significance of his pilgrimage in this phase of the rising action as he explores the central station? Okay, so this piece of text begins with a kind of 200-mile tramp or journey, all right, which is described on page 67 here at the end of his stay in the outer station. In other words, a really, really long walk. Okay, 200 miles is a really long walk. Okay, from the outer station into the central station. Okay, when he gets to the central station, he is thunderstruck to find out that the steamship that he was captained brought all the way from Europe, all the way from England to lead. To captain is sunk at the bottom of the river. Okay, so he's come all the way down here, and the job that he was hired to do, he is incapable of doing as it stands, and he is going to have to pull that wreckage out from the bottom of the river and weld it back together, make it seaworthy again, so that he can work his way into the heart of the Congolese continent, okay, or colony's environment. All right. So he, while there, develops a relationship with the manager. Okay, the manager of the entire company is a man that Marlow describes as hollow, or he basically has nothing inside him. He says that if you want to, the manager sort of says with sort of tongue in cheek, if you want to survive out here, you need to have no entrails. In other words, you need to have no intestines. You need to have nothing inside you. All right, that's the only way you can survive out here. Okay. Then he learns that an individual named Mr. Kurtz, who is the agent responsible for running the inner station, the innermost station, where the most ivory in the country is sort of harvested from, and then it's sent down the river to the central station, and then sent overland from the central station to the outer station, and then obviously all around the world as the Belgian Congo Company trades ivory for a profit. All right, and Mr. Kurtz, the best agent they have, is ill. He's sick. All right, Kurtz is described as an excellent or exceptional man of the greatest importance. Okay, obviously. On page 72, Marlow goes to work the next day, attempting to sort of dredge out the wreckage of his steamship and to make it seaworthy once again, to make it able to float. All right. He then develops a relationship in the months. It takes him about 3 months to do this, right? During those months, he develops a relationship with a guy named the brickmaker, okay, who he never sees making any bricks ever. And the brickmaker is a very political individual, right? He is very concerned with the amount of power that he has in the organization. He begins pumping Marlow for information. He's obviously developed some kind of relationship with Kurtz, who the brickmaker thinks will be the next manager of the company. Everybody thinks that, as a matter of fact, even the manager himself. The manager fears Kurtz because of that. Okay, so the brickmaker, who has a relationship with Kurtz, he even has one of his paintings hung in his quarters, which we'll talk about later, thinks that Marlow is going to take his job as assistant manager. All right, so the brickmaker thought that he was going to be assistant manager. He thinks Marlow is going to take his job because Marlow has been brought here special, and he read some correspondence about Marlow being hired because of Marlow's high-up connections from his aunt. Obviously, Marlow has no high-up connections. Marlow has no idea who Mr. Kurtz is, but he allows the brickmaker to believe that he does. Why? I don't know, and he doesn't really either. Okay, even though Marlow confesses to hating, detesting, and not being able to bear a lie, Okay, he simply begins to kind of deceive and backbite and manipulate because everyone else in this environment is also doing so. All right. He tries to get the rivets. Okay, rivets are just little binding tools that help bind together sheets of metal. He needs some rivets. All right, in order to make his ship seaworthy, to make it float. He tries to get them and he can't get them. And so by the end of part one, he's just sitting around waiting to be able to do the job that he was hired to do. And he's just meditating on this individual named Kurtz, who he grows increasingly kind of obsessed with. Because Kurtz, unlike everyone else, all right, Kurtz, unlike everyone else in the environment that Marlow's been exposed to, seems to be a man that everyone agrees is exceptional, is a sort of beacon of hope, a man who works for a reason. Marlow is attracted to that, and it sort of helps, his attraction is deepened by the fact that he is juxtaposed with the absurdity of everything else that he's seeing. Brickmakers who don't make any bricks, managers who have no moral ideals, an environment completely sort of immersed in lies, manipulation, deceit, misidentifications, misevaluations. Kurtz seems to be the bearer of the sacred spark, a bearer of the sacred fire, a man who might work for a reason. All right? And that is the end of part one. We'll be analyzing this in much more detail tomorrow and in the following day. All right, so I hope you guys have a great day today. That's all we have. A nice little short class, short and sweet. You might want to spend some time doing some reading. You might want to spend some time working on your essays. But that's all we have for today.